is. You are in frame, Shelly. There's nobody on here. Those
I
tools.
got my ImageX wires on. I'm doing
There you
my
go.
best.
Yeah. Nothing to worry about. And I'm gonna do that. There we go. The edges of a lens are never flattering. See, is there? I don't need a waiting room. Let people join when people are gonna join. I'm just gonna go off camera for just the beginning because I don't think anybody wants to watch that on the video stream. Hey there, Eric. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing all right. I think we're just getting some thunderstorms here, but like it was so gorgeous today. I went down into town, which is like a half-hour drive down a coastal highway. So it's like
Uh-huh.
always like one of the most beautiful views.
Nice. Yeah, I'm in California right now for work, um, and it's always beautiful. Like at Stanford,
Oh yeah, yeah.
like year round is pretty much between 68 and 72. So
Yeah, I
yeah, and then
understand that feel.
yeah, there was wind and it wasn't even cold. So it's like it's a weird place. But
Right
they
on.
keep cutting down trees, it'll get worse, I guess.
Anything fun? Is it just the webcam thing that you're doing in person? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's just for web. I came one day early because they do this like staff, student, faculty, community lunch um, every year, and it was today. So,
Right on.
but it's just been like a whirlwind. Today's just been just non-stop. I've just been in and out of meetings. I've had to leave meetings to go to like a 15-minute meeting to come back to the other meeting. So like it's just today was crazy.
Wow, you're gonna
I'm
need the
happy to
weekend to
kind of
recoup, right?
yeah. So I'm happy to be relaxed and
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to see you, Ben. I think I love doing like social things, but I know that it takes so much
yeah,
energy. Even when you're hardly doing anything, it just takes so much energy just being there.
yeah,
All right. Hi, Peter. How are
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I think the biggest thing that I'm happy is, well, I still have to do some stuff tonight, but like I call it my sponsor mask
Oh
or
yeah,
like talking and helping sponsors for an event. You have to just be like this certain way, and it's not me. So,
yeah, yeah.
but
Uh, what is it called? Method acting.
right, totally.
Yeah, I hear you, man. That's why sometimes like if I'm actually working for a company and I have like booth time at a trade show or at a conference, like that's one of those things where it has to have a time limit. Like
Yeah.
it can't be all day. That's a lot. I used to work for a company that did patient education, and it was like 3D things of like, here's what a cataract surgery would be like, or here's what LASIK is like, or here's how to put contacts in your eyes, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And we had a booth, and I traveled all over the country and whatnot, which was great by itself. But I would have to set up the booth, and I would have to like troubleshoot any computer issues, which I mean, it was my job. But then once all that was done, I just had to physically be in the booth, suit and tie, talking to people about either existing issues or why they want to buy the software that we had. But yeah, you're in that frame of mind for that long. Like by the time you hit the dinner time, you're just floored.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hear you. So anyway, how Hi, Peter. Hi, Pavlos. How are you doing?
Uh,
Very good, thank
not
you.
bad.
Right on.
How are
Right
you?
on. Doing good. I was just telling Eric that today was a beautiful day here on Sunshine Coast, driving down the coastal highway or whatnot to go into town to meet somebody for coffee. And they were calling for rain all day, and it was just beautiful and sunny. And now there's thunder, which is really rare here. How about yourself? How are you doing?
Okay. Here the weather is a bit gloomy-ish.
A little bit more in character for Vancouver.
Yeah.
Right on. How about you, Peter? How you doing?
Doing very good. I'm starting to get into more conferences, and I'm going to a cool one tomorrow in webcam in
Oh,
Boston.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll be
great.
doing I'll be doing what, two sessions tomorrow.
Two sessions. Yep.
Yeah,
I'll be moderating these two sessions as well. So
excellent.
if you have any problems, you can yell
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Are these recorded sessions that they're doing at webcamp, or are they
at
just
me. They are unless you specify you don't want it
okay?
recorded.
So if it's like a
So
sensitive topic sort of thing.
yeah, or if you just don't feel comfortable, like the Paul Najukian who's doing the keynote, he doesn't want to be recorded or live streamed on
Gotcha.
Friday. So for whatever his reasons are. I don't
Yeah, I guess some people protect their brand or have their reasons,
know.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it looks fun. I think this time, I told a few people this. I'm going to try a little bit of an audience selection sort of approach. I've done both these talks so many times, and I tweak them a little bit every time to improve them. But there are a lot of slides. It's just a fire hose of
Yeah.
information, which can be overwhelming for some people. So I'm going to try a different approach where at the beginning of each one, I'll say, look, you can either just, I'll be a fire hose of information if you just want to kick back and just absorb and maybe take a look at the slides later, stuff like that. That's cool. Or it can be a little bit more audience participation with Q&A and stuff, and I'll just cover some basics. Then you can ask me whatever you want on this topic. So I'll give that a try and see if either one's more receptive. But I think it's also in the afternoon, people have different energy levels. So
Yeah.
it's hard to read where people are, whether they want to participate or whatnot. Oh, when does the first session start? Is it like what, 10 or something like that?
Nine, yeah. So 9:45 will be like welcome, kind of 15 minutes, and then they'll start at 10.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So and then Friday, yeah, we did good this year. I think the in person part is going to be pretty cool.
How many attendees have registered at least?
So the most is Thursday or online. So I think I need to double check again, but we're hitting maybe close to 100.
Okay.
And the in person, um, we're at like maybe pushing 40. But since it's kind of like this casual camp thing, we've never had like an RSVP or register or anything. People just kind of show up and find
Okay.
it. So it'll probably be
So you get a final tally afterward. How many?
yeah.
So it's what, three or four simultaneous sessions?
Yeah. I think Friday we managed to get all four slots for each time. Thursday we had three left open that so we didn't get anybody for it, but
Right on.
so couldn't I like the for my own mindset and who I am, the kind of casual aspect of it I really enjoy. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And is it mostly Stanford students, or do you feel like it's a bit of a mix between students and professionals?
we are trying to I think it's previously been most like staff that have Stanford staff, um, at least for the in-person stuff, but we would love students more students come, and I think somebody's giving a talk about Open University.
Okay.
So that will be helpful. And I've got some papers or some flyers for the IXP initiative that I made for them.
Okay.
And I've got the Pacific Time Virtual Drupal Users Group. Um, and then I'll be touting mid-camp as well. But yeah,
Right on. Right on. Lots to promote. Do you
yeah.
have other
Mhm.
people helping you with that? Whether it's the promotion or just helping, around the event?
Yeah, we have seven actually. So we've got six, and then we got some extra volunteers that have asked to help out with stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean it's a pretty small group, but it's fun.
Right on. Well, congratulations on another year of setting that up and getting through it, and looking forward to getting a feel for it and my first time.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we got Ryan joining us as well. Uh, nice to meet you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing tonight?
Doing great, doing great. Just telling these folks that I got out to meet somebody for coffee and just driving along the coast. I'm in British Columbia in an area called Sunshine Coast, and it just ended up being a beautiful day. How about yourself?
I am in the wilds of Canby, Oregon. So I'm just south of Oregon City, so in the kind of the Portland area.
Okay.
Nice.
I do a lot of work for Caltrans remotely. I'm their project lead for migrating from their entire intranet for the entire state, with the second largest transportation department in the United States. Their entire intranet is being upgraded from Drupal 7 to Drupal 11.
Oh,
So
nice.
Wow.
yeah, my contract is going
Wow.
through 2026 to the end. So at minimum. So
That's good.
it's a big, long, humongous project. Over 130 major internal websites for each for each individual department, and there are lots, everything from high-speed rail to HR and IT for the entire state of California. So yeah, it's
All
Drupal
right.
gets quite well used.
Are
Yeah.
you getting any help in that with like
Oh, I have a whole
tag
team.
or
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's nice because it's the intranet, so it's all the internal stuff. All the external stuff is all running on Sitecore, and that's a whole different ball of wax that I keep my fingers out of. And so it's I'm specific to the migration project because that's my bread and butter and has been for over a decade now. So okay, 20, yeah, yeah. So that's my major project. And I occasionally consult with. I used to work for the University of Washington, and then I just finished up a contract with University of Oregon with their new Knight campus, which is Phil Knight's Center for Scientific Acceleration, and it has all the nifty bioengineering department and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I do.
Well, right on. Well, nice to have you here.
Oh, hi.
And Peter, I think this is your first time here too. Is that right?
This is my second time,
Okay.
and I'm planning to be more consistent.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. What was the first one that you went to? Because I'm trying to do my best at keeping tallies of folks who attend and give people credit.
Um, must have been in February, somewhere
Okay.
around then.
Okay. So that might be why I don't have it in the document because I think I only started putting it in the document in March. Well, certainly nice to see you again. And whereabouts are you located? I can't recall.
I'm located around Bay Area near the peninsula, so it's very good
Okay.
location, close to
Oh,
San Francisco and
Right
the
on.
two suburbs.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful area out there. Yeah. Well, it's good to see so many people from so many places. I know Eric is from the Vancouver, Washington, right?
yeah, Southern Vancouver.
And Pavlos here is in the other Vancouver in British Columbia. So quite the geographic spread here.
Yeah. We
And
have a Faye.
we do. Hi, Faye. Thanks for joining.
Oh, I got distracted by spreadsheets and data and formulas. Sorry about that.
Oh, that is a hyper focused time suck right there.
It is because I spun out all afternoon and then got into a rhythm once it was nearing the end of the day. You know that one? Oh,
Oh yeah.
sorry
Yep.
about that. Also hailing from Vancouver, BC right now. Oh, I don't know why I looked outside to check if it was still
Just in
Vancouver,
case.
but it is. Yeah, it's still Vancouver. Yeah,
Right
sorry.
on. So we were just getting through just a brief talk about how everybody's doing and talking a little bit about webcam. Um, haven't done a preamble because I'm trying to actually wait to do a preamble until several people come in, just because, well, doing it over and over again doesn't make sense. But I could do it again if other people join. But I did want to at least say a couple of housekeeping sort of things at the beginning of these. Number one, these are all recorded for the sake of sharing our meetups with the community. If somebody joins late or can't join, it's an affordance that we give to folks. I'll share the notes document from our meetup here where there is an AI transcription from that as well. Again, accommodations for anybody. There's a code of conduct. We just adhere to the Drupal.org code of conduct. If you have any complaints, let me know. And again, that's another reason for the recording is accountability. I will take everybody's name down and hopefully I can make sure that I have everybody's Drupal username because I want to give you credit in Drupal.org for having attended. But yeah, that's about the housekeeping stuff. I'm going to be awkward.
Doing all of this, Chad. You sure are a great facilitator.
Like I facilitated a thing or two in my time. I'm not old. And this is my wife back here. Uh, she can't hear you, but she can see you, and she can hear me. I think if I speak up. She's watching a Celtics game, and they're currently losing by 3 points. She does not like this. She's a Celtics fan. Our topic today, which we'll get into, I think shortly, is Drupal recipes. Obviously, if anybody wants to share anything, share your screen or something, feel free to do so. If you've done anything great with it, if you have any complaints, this is a dumping ground for all of those fun thoughts, intrusive or not. So I guess the only other, not really a point of order, but just again, a housekeeping thing is right now, I only scheduled the meetups on meetup.com through June because I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in that space, but it helps with reach. Ryan Price had said, hey, maybe you can use this because previously I was using Eventbrite for it. And I think it may confuse people if it's on the Portland one, just because that's geographically tied. It's good for reach and that's great. And hopefully if you have come here because of that, but I think I might move over to Luma, partly because Luma's free. And I've seen a few other meetups using that as well. So I might give that a try for the other half of the year. So if you see anything change, that's something that I'll do. But without further ado, let's talk about Drupal. That's why we're here, right? Anything that anybody wants to talk about before we get into recipes?
Is experience builder out yet?
Oh God, you actually bring up a good point. I'm on Drupal 7 for my personal site, and I just registered a new domain, Chad's Chaos, because capital Chad's looks like chaos. So that was my fun thing, and I'm so eager to do it, but I'm holding back until Experience Builder hits at least a stable release. So I heard that it's supposed to hit a stable release in July, theoretically. I'm spooking the Drupal release gods. But yeah, I certainly hope to see Experience Builder. I loved the preview in the Dries note. That was really exciting. I thought it was going to look a lot like Layout Builder, and it doesn't. What are your thoughts of that, Pavlos? What excites you about Experience Builder?
Well, I thought it was gonna look a lot like Site Studio. Kinda does, I guess. Well, having Site Studio with a more Drupal-y backend, I guess, excites me the most because I like the way Site Studio does things.
It looks more like a friendly UI too.
Yeah.
Pretty clean. I wonder about accessibility, but sensitivities, right?
I'm just
Uh,
comes with a custom Lego set. That's kind of more in the best.
I know
do you think
Site
it's
Studio did a lot of things around accessibility for making it possible for you at least to use the keyboard to drop components on the page and configure them, but I don't know if they took that work and put it into Experience Builder as well. I hope they did.
hope so. I usually do with core stuff. I see Nora joined. Welcome. I know
Hey.
it's a little later there in what, Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah, it's 8:21 here.
Not inaccessible, just a little more tired. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. How are you today?
I'm really happy. I got to see beautiful Sunshine Coast on a drive. Going to see somebody for coffee earlier today, so doing really nice.
You always get to do the fun outdoorsy things. I don't know. I need to push myself, I'll be honest.
It's
I don't
it's a
do it, and I
sin.
should.
It's a sin
He,
not to here.
yeah, I was gonna say he lives in a pretty outdoorsy focused area.
This is true.
Fair.
All of
Says
the
the guy that never goes out in Vancouver.
all of the backgrounds for our meetups here are literally like I'll share the link for today's. These are just drone shots from right over where I'm living. It's just not even fair. But I mean, my wife and I deliberately moved from Baltimore, where all we were doing is looking out our window, staring at other houses. And we told ourselves we need to see trees, water, or mountains. And we moved to a place that had all three.
And
Yeah,
no
the
road to the mainland.
no road. There are people here on the coast that are fighting to have a bridge. I'm like, that's no, you can't build a bridge that long. Maybe if you went up towards Squamish where it's a bit more narrow, but it's just not going to happen. That would be so expensive.
I mean, the ferry's pretty expensive too, so
Yeah, yeah, the ferries need their upkeep. I'm gonna put the link to our meetup notes in here too. So that's our meetup notes. I'll fill this in as we go along, and I'll share it in our. If you're not in the Slack channel, the Drupal Slack channel, that's also something to join. It's linked in the overview of that same document. There are tabs on the left. Uh, but if you just want to know the name of it, get ready for it. It's a mouthful. It is Pacific Time Virtual Drupal Users Group. So PTVDUG for short. Rolls off the tongue.
I've
So
been getting better and better at saying that. So.
sometimes I forget that the users is plural. I'll say user group. Not the same. Uh, let's get into it. Unless anybody else has something else that they want to talk about. You want to talk about recipes? Anybody have big feels about recipes?
Before you move on to that,
Yeah.
I came in when you were talking about Experience Builder,
Yeah.
and I've been trying to get a handle on like where is the best place to demo it? Is it just off of the main project page? I see a try. Well, see, it goes to a Git. I don't know. Anybody have like a suggestion on the best way to demo the latest Experience
The
Builder?
latest, I'm not
I
sure.
yeah, I think it's
Uh,
just in Git.
yeah,
Um,
there's a demo. Trying to find the link.
Yeah, it's off the project page. I just didn't know if that was really the latest, like, because it says 2 months ago, and I feel like things have been
Yeah,
happening.
it's not the latest. I tried installing the latest, it didn't go so well.
Oh, okay. But all that functionality is more or less what was probably up a couple months ago that you were
It's
referring to, right?
what they demoed in Atlanta.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. I'll try that then, just to get my head around, to be honest, what it's all about. I don't know, I am curious, at least to some extent, where the direction is going with the latest effort, but I'm not seeing immediately where any of that track sort of planning is it happening on the project itself, or
Good
maybe it's kind of insider
question.
knowledge at the moment. I don't know.
I think it's Drupal Slack maybe is like the
Okay.
most active in the experience builder channel.
All right. I'll maybe check out there then. Thank you. That was it.
And Nora, are you trying to demo it from a I want to use the interface, or is it more of like show me the features and the sizzle reel?
Show me the features, kind of see how far along it is with configurability, and interested to see, like, or hear what major features they're looking to target as this second phase lift or whatever that's due by the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah. Did you see the Dries node or any of the stuff from DrupalCon?
I didn't get to dive into it much at DrupalCon now.
That might be worth a gander because it was highlighted at least during the Dries note, and I think there was at
Yeah.
least another session to dive into it.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't get to go to the session basically. So maybe
yeah,
that's where I'll start, is just looking at the session and checking out the channel. Appreciate it.
of course, of course. I'm very curious how Experience Builder and many other things work with today's topic, recipes. Has anybody used recipes? And if so, what have you done with it? Have you done anything cool? Is it better than, say, install profiles or distributions or features or I don't know, name a thing?
It's different. I wouldn't say better or worse. It's different. Think of it more like features, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's not it's not quite like features either.
a little bit simpler than features, I guess.
It's think of recipes like a starter kit, I guess.
Okay. So if I were to use a pre-existing recipe, when I deploy a site and use that recipe, does the recipe matter anymore?
No, that's
Okay,
why
so
I think of it like a starter kit.
I see.
Because
I see.
once you install it, you own it, basically.
Okay, so there's no like, hey, update your recipe. We've made improvements. It's more, no, you're basically forking as soon as you use it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless
For
they
That that
change
has
something.
that has been discussed though about updating recipes, but I don't think it's made much traction.
Oh, I see. So like if you have a event calendar recipe with a content type, a view, stuff like that, and they make some improvements, in theory, you could rerun the recipe, assuming you're vanilla.
Yeah, I think you can rerun them, but like previous
Yeah,
stuff, I don't think it'll update it. It'll just add new stuff, maybe. I'm not entirely
you can
sure.
rerun the recipe as far as I know, but I haven't tried that.
Can we call it something like refried?
Reheat.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's not like features where you could
It's not a
you
module
can
that's
keep the
installed.
feature. Yeah, it's not a module that you can install.
Then you have overrides, and yeah, that was always a tedious thing about feed. So it sounds a bit more like a install profile, but perhaps even after something's installed.
It's an install profile that you can own and customize once you install it, basically.
Okay. Is it basically just a wrapper for a bunch of config?
Yeah,
I
it's a
see.
wrapper for config and modules. Like you say, I want these modules, I want to install them. and then I want to configure them in this way, basically.
Okay. Does it have version dependencies, kind of like Composer has?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you can, because you can, the recipe has its own composer file, so you can restrict it in the particular version that you want. Everything, anything like that that you do with Composer.
So it sounds like a company that specializes in specific niches. Like if I love popping up restaurant sites or library sites or school sites, there's a lot of rinse and repeat if you have multiple clients. This sounds like something where you can come up with recipes that really work for you, tweak them over the course of time, and just make your deployments
Yeah.
starting point really fast.
Yeah, basically. Think of it. I assume people here worked with Acquia Site Factory.
You assume a lot.
Okay, so I'm trying to think how to put it. So in Site Factory, basically, you are kind of strongly encouraged, let's say, to use cookie cutter sites. So you end up with this, I don't want to say monstrosity, but the monolith of an install profile, let's call it, that has all the features that all of the sites will ever need. So you may end up with a monolith install profile that has articles, events, calendar for displaying the events, your search pages, and whatnot. Whereas not all of the sites may need events. Like, for example, maybe your majority of sites or all of them will need articles, but only a handful will need events. If you were doing it with recipes, you would have your recipe for articles, your recipe for events, your recipe that displays the events for the calendar. And as you spin up these sites, you could pick and choose which of the features you want to have on your site, basically.
Okay. Okay.
So it pairs well with, forget what they call it, package manager, I think. The thing that displays immediately when you launch Drupal CMS and lets you pick what you want to install. All of those things that you pick when you install Drupal CMS are recipes, basically.
Okay.
Project tracking?
Yeah. Is it Project Browser or something like
Package
that?
package manager is the one that does the provisioning, I thought. It's been a minute since I've touched code. Can we just acknowledge that for a second? I'm not deeply in the Drupal world, sadly.
Project Browser, sorry, I misspoke.
Yeah.
Not
There it
Package
is.
Manager.
I'm like, I do pay attention sometimes, you know. Yeah.
The words come across your desk sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I should just pretend to be more confident, and then y'all will probably believe me. That's how that works, right? Like I could have just made something up and then just said it really confidently, right?
Constant AI prompting. AI, complete this thought for me.
Yeah.
Can you debug this code for me?
That's not what, yeah, no, I don't know.
The AI will not replace us.
Not yet,
Some
anyway.
of us.
So I think recipes have been really touted by a lot of agencies, and I mean that's just been my observation as something that can really help with tons and tons of repeat work. What are the other value propositions that you can think of? Like how do we sell this beyond just the agency efficiencies?
Good question. I mean, it's an efficiency for any, I guess, code shop, not just agencies, even if you have an internal team.
Gotcha.
where you
I mean, if you
used
think of
to.
the Squarespace or the Wix sort of approach, a lot of it is like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to install a blog to your thing? Okay, here's your blog. So I guess if I'm a marketer and I don't really do a lot of code, this is that no code alignment. Nora, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I mean, thinking of just the concept of recipes and that there's lots of interest in utilizing recipes on existing community projects like and just because I'm in the event space, the Drupal event platform is I don't know how much movement there's been, but I know that there's interest in like leveraging recipes for providing like different configuration, more or less different configuration types or different feature sets to whoever might like consume um, the Drupal event platform across like different camps might have different features that they want, sort of thing. And so conceptually, it makes a lot of sense, especially to me anyway, for um, any project, existing project or new project that is trying to solve like a lot of different use cases within the same project. Um, like open social comes to mind as like a really big like distribution that has lots and lots of features and it got really into I haven't really checked it out like recently, but when I did a few years back, when it was like Drupal 8 was new, it was rather convoluted the way that it had to leverage install profiles and um, starter configuration, um, like sort of install scripting and all this other stuff in order to get it to like do the expected use cases or combination of use cases that folks might need. So for me, it's like more of a solve for distributions than or something like a distribution than um, a starter pack for a agency, I'll be honest.
Okay. Yeah, I remember COD was
Uh,
a big thing for the longest time, but no one ever wanted to update it. Looks like Acquia updated it a little bit for 8, but I don't think it's gotten much more traction since then.
you should reach out to Martin Anderson. He's working on an event platform.
Yeah, I just can't remember what he said recently about what he's doing
Uh,
or not doing with it right now.
I put the project link in the chat.
Yeah, it looks like it had a release in April, so it is active. It looks like a beta too, so
Yeah, he's
stable
doing a
enough
lot
at
of
least.
work on it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Guess the other thing with recipes is since a lot of them are hosted on Drupal.org or can be hosted on Drupal.org, you can surface them through project browser. So if you are looking for a recipe or best practices, let's say, on how to create something like a blog or something, you can just search for blog recipes and find one that you like and roll with it. I don't know if we have a way of rating things on Drupal.org. Probably not, other than that star thing. But if you if we did and people could rate recipes, then it would give an easy way for people to see, oh, this is popular. It must be doing something right. I'll try that.
I think most people tend to use the number of sites reported using the module as kind of one indicator, but it's not the same as a rating. It's just more a matter of like, how popular is this? If it's the only thing in its space, then that's not really a good comparison. I, I don't know. I kind of have two schools of thought when it comes to um, something like a turnkey recipe, if you will, for blog events, stuff like that. One is, you know, some projects require very detailed thought about information architecture, content strategy, usability, things like that. And a recipe is a bit of a one size fits all, unless it is a bit more targeted. Like, here's a blog, but specifically for influencers, or here's a blog specifically for corporate sites. And that may be a little bit different of a flavor. Um, Maybe some context would help with those sort of recipes to call it out. But on the other hand, maybe a recipe really is just a starting point, and then you can kind of manipulate it a little bit from there. I guess it all depends on budget, expertise, things like that.
Yeah, if you go through the documentation for recipes, they encourage you to build them as granular as possible. So if you're building a blog recipe, for example, you may have a lot of, let's say, sub recipes, I guess, ingredient recipes. Like a recipe that gives you the blog content type or the blog taxonomies and so on, and then your overall blog recipe that puts everything together.
So are there recipes that can depend on other recipes?
Yeah, a recipe can depend on other recipes.
I think that's the thing. It's sort of like, you make your sauce and then you determine what you're going to do with that sauce. Um, Anybody else want to chime in? No, a few of us are kind of taking center stage here.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't had time to really get into the meat of recipes. I've applied them and reapplied them, and I love the image recipe. That seems like the most monotonous, painful thing to do. Sites to create like the responsive image styles and all that stuff, and they kind of put sane defaults in there, which is nice.
Right on, right on. Is it a reluctance where you don't want to use it until it gets more community traction, or is it just more a matter of you haven't had time?
I just haven't had time. I've been playing around with it on like DDev sites and stuff, um, but I haven't used it for anything.
Eric, how many sites or like what's the setup for Stanford? That you work for Stanford, right? I know some universities have like a multi-site setup and some universities have like some bizarre, you know, some branches have WordPress and then some other branches, some other departments have, their own Drupal instance or something else. Are there many smaller sites kind of around, or is it kind of one?
It so Stanford proper did a big push a couple years ago to launch their sites platform, which there's a session about at WebCamp following days. And but at electrical engineering, we've always just kind of done our own thing because like there's no cookie cutter for our people, for the faculty and stuff like that. Like I am running a Joomla site somewhere. I'm running a couple WordPress sites, mostly Drupal and then a bunch of static things. But the university proper works with Acquia. They have a deal with Acquia to do all their sites platform stuff. So so we're like electrical engineering and CS are kind of like Frankenstein's monster of the university. And we don't like to be told what our limitations are, so can't put us in a box. So we do our own.
Yeah, I just wrapped up with the University of Oregon for a contract, and they use Drupal, but they're using Pantheon, and they've got it locked down like crazy. They don't like any any outside contractors to come in to deal with their code. It's a very, very structured code. Their branding is all it's extremely controlled. So they have their own theme, their own process. You got to contact their Drupal team to do pretty much anything, anything beyond basic content manipulation. Even to have a view created was kind of a chore. But their team at least knows what they're doing. But yeah, they're all Drupal. I think they're Drupal 10 and 10 or 11, and they're all on Pantheon. So they went ahead and sprang for that instead of multi-site. Caltrans, on the other hand, they have a whole different set of rules. They won't even allow me to use DDEV, which is just kind of sorry, personal gripe. But they have it locked down as well in a lot of instances, but they're all multi-site. So it's all their internal sites that I work on anyway. It's all multi-site, which just adds a huge weird way. I mean, we looked at recipes early on to see how whether or not that would work as an option, and it was decided pretty early that no, that wouldn't quite work because all the stuff that we're moving has over the years kind of evolved into their own little beasts, which is maddening to a certain extent because you have like about 4 or 5 real common content types or taxonomies and stuff like that. But then over time, they've just kind of gone bleh, one direction, bleh, the other, and you get all these variations. And so I've had to resort to using like config split if you've ever played with that. And it's the config is a monster. It is a monster, and I am taming this monster as part of my migration strategy. And boy, yeah. Unfortunately, the use case for recipes, of course, is you're an agency, you've got a lot of clients of one particular type or another that you can kind of pigeonhole as to what they are. And then you're like, yeah, I got that. Here, I'll just go boink on button and launch your Drupal site for you, customer of type A or type B. And that's unfortunately not the reality in my contracting life anyway. So you get so much variation for everybody's needs are just slightly different. But yeah, if you break it down more granularly, someone mentioned using the recipe for images. Because that's all pre-configured. Media is another one that is I need to investigate further because they didn't use media in their instance of Drupal 7. They used like just file structure. They didn't use the media module at all. And so transitioning to actually using that and providing all the users with a better user experience in dealing with that migration is right there as well. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I was asking because I work for a large enterprise company, and there are a number of sort of like smaller teams with their own little microsites, like they have their own little projects. And we've talked about potentially trying to build it in Drupal, manage it, whatever it is. And it's just too much work. Our team is already max. We've already got enough interesting projects. We don't need to, be picking up anything not exciting, especially. But I wonder if there's sort of merit in the model where, you want to give people some wiggle room in exactly how their version, like their branch of the site or their instance is going to kind of manifest, but you want to get them started off in the right point. And having a large enterprise, once you get to a certain capacity, you have to either decide to go full board, which is what my company is doing. Like we're going to one Renaissance everything, one Jira, one all of the things, which has merit, and then sometimes it's frustrating. There's pros and cons to each. But there's a middle ground for some places. And I wonder if recipes is kind of like a good, if you want to just give somebody a starting point, like at least I know the direction that you're going to go in. If I need to jump in and support your site, if I give you a recipe to get going with, I kind of, like maybe, I don't know. I
It
don't know.
it seems like recipes are a way of encapsulated an opinionated thing. So, for
Yeah.
example, like obviously it stands out for agencies. I think that's the one that everybody calls out. But even things like universities have tons of different sites. Or if you have more than one site and you want to standardize, it's the create once, use many. It's that philosophy
Yeah.
all the developers tend to know. But I think Ryan, you triggered me a little bit with calling out images. One thing I remember hearing from a lot of developers whenever I was trying to come up with a website is, I want these images to be responsive. I want them to be really standardized. So that way we have predictable sizes for different things. And every time I heard from them, Chad, that many permutations, that many variations on image styles will take us forever. So we have to price it out like that. And every time I'm like, but you're doing it for every site. Can't we capture that somehow? And it sounds like recipes is part of that potential formula to capture it. But there's other things like good best practices or common tools and stack that a lot of us put on almost every Drupal site. It seems to potentially alleviate some of that setup, if you will, that we had to repeat over and over. Is that accurate or am I off base?
Yeah. No, quite accurate.
No, it is accurate. And the thing is, I'm kind of doing the same thing, but not with a recipe. We had an example. I inherited essentially one site that is our golden example, as we like to call it, that essentially is the Drupal 11 site as we want it to be. And so I was able to just take the config from that and then repeat that as part of what we're doing, and then you migrate the data kind of in there with a lot of data mapping. So that we were able to do it once, and then just simply copy the config into just kind of a common config that as we went in and started migrating sites, it would just be replicable and do it that way. So it's essentially recipes, but not recipes. That makes sense. But the concept is the same, right? That's just how we did it. So we didn't officially use recipes, but the concept we did. So that's pretty much it.
Right. You're talking about leveraging config split in that particular scenario, Brian?
Oh yeah, config
Okay.
split and then commonalities. We have a big. Speaking of spreadsheets, whoever was doing spreadsheets earlier, I feel your pain because data maps. Holy crap! Yeah, that's. Yeah, for 130 sites. Yeah, that's been a major part of my lifetime for the last 3 months. But yeah, using config split, using multi-site, using a lot of documentation. I've written more documentation in the last 3 months than I have ever, which is kind of a backhanded compliment, I think. I really should do more documentation just in general. But yeah, that's how we achieved it was identifying what those splits are, by the way, is a serious pain in the butt. That took a lot of time and going through and figuring out, okay, this particular one, we gotta set up the split that's only for this site and only for this site and only for this site. And there's a ton. I mean, just on one Drupal site, there are just a ton of migration or config files that just it's enough to drive you mad if you were one person. Fortunately, I have a team, and that delegation has kept my sanity. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and the config split. I don't know if everybody has worked with config split here, but it can help define not only the sort of split of configuration, but dependencies of modules and things to some extent, and that as well, which I think is kind of
Absolutely.
like two of the major things that recipes also solves, right? The only thing that I see that, at least so far, that I've grasped on that recipes does more than or also is the default config, or I'm sorry, the default content portion. Um, So, and I don't know, I haven't really picked it up since NedCamp last year, I think is what it was. So, and seen any more sessions since then. So I might be out of date on like what it all can do, what all recipes can do now. So I'll be like interested to see if there's any work on, because like your use case is a complex one, but
Yeah,
I do feel like it's a target use case
potentially,
for
yeah, and which
recipes
is
potentially, right?
yeah,
And if it could solve for like what the mapping sort of problem and do that better somehow, data mapping for content migration. I don't know. I'm not sure what that would
yeah.
thing would
For
be.
data map, for my example, no, I have to actually go in and I've had to. There's a lot of institutional memory around this stuff. We're talking years and years of them having installed Drupal 7 and never updating it, or very rarely updating it. I think they were when in part of the discovery process, I discovered they were running Drupal 7.31. We were at 101 when I came onto the project. So yeah, a lot of turnover apparently was a contributing factor. So uh, there is a lot of institutional memory that I've been able to access by interviewing a lot of the stakeholders and finding out a lot. You know, that's a big process for that goes on with that, and I'd be screwed without it, to be honest. But yeah, the recipes has my interest for this, and this is kind of one of the reasons I showed up was that we looked at it. We're kind of doing it in concept. We're not quite the config split is the way we're doing it with all the different like HR and IT and high speed rail and every freeway, all the construction groups and everything like that, um, because it's an entire department of transportation. Uh, so what we're having to get those splits in there, those things, we have a common amount of these configs that we keep, and then we use config split for the site specific stuff and overrides of those commonalities. So it's not, I mean, we have like certain content types that only exist on site B or site C, but we also have ones that are commonalities with additional fields or less fields, depending. And so we have these overrides that we have to do as well. So that's how we use it. And so it's kind of, again, conceptually roughly the same. It's just we're not starting, we're migrating from existing. And so that's why it didn't quite work. The image one I'm interested in going in there because that might be something to steal. So yeah, there's use there. It is kind of a use case for it, but it's kind of on the edge, right?
I can take a look at the profile manager module that I shared in the chat. It may help you in some bits because that allows you to create profiles again. Oh, okay. I thought that was quiet again. But anyway, the profile manager module allows you to spin up sites from a common profile, but also allows you to extend profiles with optional modules that can be installed, which sounds like it may suit your use case.
One of the coolest setups that I saw early on in D8, we were still in D8 at the time, was a really large enterprise setup, and so they had the same vision of like we want to control what each of these sort of separate sites looks like. So you have to follow the style guide, and this is what the style guide looks like, and what they did is they actually had a separate repository with each of the sort of like components, like each paragraph level component with different layouts and different options and whatever it was, kind of bundled neatly such that in the second composer file, it was just a list of each component, like, 2-column, 3-column, image left, image, like whatever name, like those components that we've seen a zillion times. And so the way that it worked is that as the first composer file was going through, it would then load the second one and then pull only the ones that you wanted. You would just open the second file and then delete the components that you didn't want to install on your instance of the site. And I'm not going to think about what year it is. Let's not do the math, shall we? Let's not think about that. But early on, D8 days, I thought this was like super cool. I'm like, oh, that is choice. And then I proceeded to work for, a bunch of different agencies and organizations that tried to do this and kind of flailed. Like, it's been possible to do this really well with Composer. And like with all of our, config management YAMLs for years and years now, but it just feels like we just need a little more help getting there.
Yeah.
So
That's where I think Project Browser will take what you described right now, recipes, and give it a nice UI.
yeah,
Because with Project Browser, you can spin out your own Project Browser source, let's say. So you can point Project Browser to your own, wherever you're hosting these modules or recipes or whatnot, and then have the CMS launcher like select from those recipes instead of Drupal.org recipes, let's say. So if you are in a company like that where you have your own ecosystem of modules and recipes and packages that you use over and over, like
Uh,
now you have a fancy UI to go with it as well.
I think it's also, if you think globally, how many times have people solved the exact same problem in Drupal across how many websites, across how many organizations? And I think this gives an opportunity for us to share some of those concepts. Maybe it's not perfect, but maybe it's a lot of work saved for either an individual or organization. I loved your idea of rating things, and I think that may not necessarily be a part of this Drupal marketplace concept, but it certainly could be. It certainly could be something that runs adjacent to that in terms of what choices you make as someone configuring a Drupal site.
Mm. I was, as we were talking earlier, I was browsing around the recipes channel and I saw that there's an initiative to track when a recipe from Drupal.org is applied. So that may be a similar way to a rating. Like if you can track how many times a recipe got applied, then I guess you can surface more popular recipes.
Yeah. Or like the verified badge or the
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Um, I have four extraordinarily basic questions, probably more for the posterity of our audience, which extends past who's here. Um, but I think maybe it can spin off additional thoughts, frustrations, ideas for improvement, that sort of thing. So the most basic things, I always think kind of CRUD and that sort of thing as a developer and designer. So first question is, how do you create a recipe? If I wanted to
Yes.
create one right now, how would I do that? I mean, generally speaking, not like step by step, literal code, all that sort of stuff. Like, what's the concept, I guess?
asking the internet. Hold on.
Create
AI.
a recipes YAML file.
Oh, is that it? You just create a YAML file
Yeah.
and you're done?
At its most basic form, yes.
Okay, so there's no like UI for it. It's more of just code.
Yeah, it's mostly code.
Okay, so I get
The closest thing you have to a UI is the Drupal UI.
okay.
As you go in, you configure things the way you want to, export the things, and then put the things in a recipe.
Okay.
I'm just trying to grab the docs link. Here's the docs link.
Okay.
But yeah, there's in the latest link, there's also a recipe author guide.
Interesting. Getting started. I guess since we're on the topic, whenever we're talking CRUD, create is one of those things. But how about if I wanted to update one? Is it just a matter of just go in, update the code, and you're done?
Update how?
Like maybe I added a field to my event content type and I want to update my recipe to reflect that.
You can guess it depends. It depends how the recipe is installing the configuration, because you can either provide a full config file with a recipe, or you can have the recipe run a config action that um, that configures certain things for you.
So like the
So
config
if
doesn't exist and it's creating it for you. Is that what you mean?
No. So for example, let's say we have a role, right? With permissions. The recipe could either provide the full role file with all of its permissions, or you can use the grant permission config action to provide only the specific permission to a role.
Okay. Okay. So it's a little bit flexible in that sense. So you've got your recipe and it's working for you. You've tested it out. You've used it maybe on a few sites. You've made some updates. It's helped you with yet more sites, and that's great for you. How do you share a recipe? Is it just a matter of put it in a repository? Is there an acceptable place on Drupal.org that recipes can be shared? Like where do you share these things?
It's just another project on Drupal.org.
I
Okay.
Or you
did
can
find, if you look at the link that I posted to Drupal.org docs extending Drupal recipes, there's a few links in there that kind of lead you to this stuff. So there's a contribute a recipe. There's also a Drupal recipes cookbook, which is a curated list of community recipes. That's where I found some of this information. That helps.
Yeah, that does help. That does help. And understand, I'm asking these questions partly because I don't personally know all of these things, and this is really helpful just navigating the space. But also, I want to make sure that anybody else here or not here has a lot of these pointers to just know where to get started and say this that it's one thing to just comb through the internet trying to find an answer. It's another thing for someone who's done it to say, here's how you do it. And I feel like that trial and error is very expensive sometimes. So yeah, this is good. This is a good starting point. I guess last question. I think I have the answer from what you shared here, Nora. How do I install a recipe? It looks like there are a few different ways, but what's your answer? Anyone here?
Drush. Wait, is it Drush or is it
Yeah,
I think
Drush.
it's Drush.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you install the recipes module or something, I believe. Oh, no, it's in core now, so you don't have to. So yeah, you just do a Drush recipe and the recipe location type thing as the command, and
Oh yeah.
it will install the recipe.
Or if I use the interface, you said what, not package manager, project browser
Project
would be
browser.
another. So if I download somebody else's recipe, I could use project browser. Is that right?
I think Project Browser currently hooks up with Drupal.org, so I would
Oh, okay.
assume it will find it if it's hosted on Drupal.org.
So if it's a project, good, getting back to
Yeah.
that point. Okay. I think we answered the main thing. So the part of the reason why I wanted to cover those four things isn't just for my own ignorance. Thank you. but also to see, is there something about any of those 4 points that could be improved or is frustrating for folks?
Trying to think. I did have a gotcha back when I was doing a presentation on this at the Portland Drupal camp, where the recipe name, it could be different from the project name, i.e. the composer recognized name. So what you use when you are requiring the recipe, like when you're doing composer require blah blah blah, it's not necessarily what you're gonna use when you apply the recipe, when you install the recipe. So just be mindful of that.
So it's a namespace type of issue
Kind of.
in multiple areas.
Is this just an oversight, or is it because they actually couldn't use the same name, or just like a syntax incompatibility, like you have to modify it or shrink it down, or
I think it's just that instead of using Drupal slash name, you just use recipe slash name when it's time to apply it. But it's something that I tripped me over a bit.
Hmm. Yeah, consistent naming conventions, and then consistent naming.
It's like in that. Let me share this thing for a moment.
Yeah. Before.
It's like this when you go to install it, and then it says use recipes slash, or because I guess in this case it's because it's required that path. Because on Drupal CMS, at the top of the project, at the root of your project, there's usually a directory called recipes. So it expects to find all the recipes in there. I guess I was so used of using Composer to install things that it caught me off guard. So I was trying to use the Composer name of the project instead of just pointing it to the directory of the recipes and giving it the name of the recipe.
Is that like a packagist
Yeah.
namespace thing? Okay.
Is that frequent, or is that in some cases it's different?
I guess this depends where you tell Composer to put the recipes, because they introduced I don't know if I have um, a new path of where if you find a package of type recipe, then put it in this directory, basically. Uh, Now, the flip side of things is that all of the recipes go in that recipes directory currently, and I wish there was a way to distinguish between contrib recipes and custom recipes the way we do it for modules,
Oh,
so that if I'm working on my own recipes, I can host them separate from all the recipes that I picked up from Drupal.org.
yeah. Can you put it in just a subfolder, or
Yeah.
prefix it with something until you want to commit or contribute?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could probably.
Slip pan. Want. You're like, look, Faye, I didn't want solutions. I just wanted to be seen in my struggle. Okay. Real.
No, I think you can do that actually, because you do have.
Struggle? You can definitely struggle.
So I guess you could tell it. I don't know how visible this is gonna be, but you could tell it instead of putting the recipes in recipes, just put it in recipes on trip, and then every custom thing you do would just go in there in a separate custom directory. So it is possible. It should be possible to do that.
Yeah.
Just didn't
You
think it
just
through.
you fixed it. You fixed Drupal. That's amazing. Just like that.
So you'd need a separate line for the custom one, is that right?
I just need a Faye on top of behind me to be like, "Yeah, why don't you try this thing?"
I found an actual step by step on one of the recipes that were in the cookbook list. Um, so I don't know if this was clear to everybody, but you still have to like do a install process of the recipe, and you could do that with like Composer, right? So just like any other project, you require it, and then you run the drush command to apply the recipe is the verbiage around it.
You require and you apply. And then there's the unpacking step, but it's a different story. The unpack is if you want to bring the dependencies from the recipe to your own root composer. And then remove the recipe basically at that point.
Did we see there's a recipe generator? Nora, do you know about this? Did you already?
I was just reading the docs, and I see that at least in the docs it says that the CLI is a future feature. Like right now, it's quote unquote initial implementation will be by hand. One of the goals of the initiative will be to build a CLI command to create Drupal recipes from an already configured site.
Wonder if there's
So as long as those docs are up to date, that's what it says.
how about AI make me a recipe? Did you hear about the AI tool that they kind of deployed, which started making really bad recipes? One was like laced with cyanide, one had cocaine. It was not a good software app that was vetted.
I didn't see the ones laced with cyanide and cocaine, but I have seen just some really
Awkward.
questionable recipes.
Like, cite your source here, buddy.
The secret's out for my secret barbecue sauce. Damn you. But it's so addictive. Well, yeah.
Until
What's
you
in
have
it?
the
Guava.
cyanide brownies.
Yeah, no cyanide brownies, please.
But
Yeah.
there was at least one AI tool that I saw somebody demo where people are using it to help create content types and whatnot. And I wonder if something similar could be used to then also create a recipe out of what you just did. If
I
it
mean,
wasn't laced with cyanide.
if it's not like, well, yeah. Okay. I mean, I've been doing this whole Drupal thing for a bunch of years. I have never come across any website that has cyanide in the configuration, fortunately. So I think we'll be okay. Yeah, I wonder if RAG would be a good useful tool. I'm trying to get my company to approve a playground. Amazy has a really great setup. I don't work for Amazy. I don't get any, I just like what they're doing. But there's a lot of concerns with AI and like feeding it your secret corporate data. And Amazy has this like really slick solution where it's all just contained, and they have their own LLM, and it's pretty fantastic. And so my company is like, oh, but we're so concerned about our data and protecting our data. And I'm like, hey, solution. And now I can
Go
build this
talk
like,
to these
RAG
guys.
AI project, right? And they're like, well, no, because we're also a big old enterprise corporation and there's a lot of bureaucracy. So full circle. I wonder if RAG would be a good solution for something like teaching it how to build like really intuitive or good content types um, and other configurations.
I think that's the thing that it all comes down to is testing, seeing how it works, correcting it, giving it a little bit more input to train it really on what to do. I know that any AI is capable of hallucinations. But one thing that I love to always point out when it comes to good standardization of content types is schema.org. I know there was the schema.org blueprint module that I think Jacob Rockowitz worked on. The reason I bring that up is if ever we're looking for standardization for content type structure, that's a good starting point. And it doesn't mean that you use absolutely every field that, I don't know, an article calls for, but more a matter of like, here's the things to consider. So I guess that could be one source of training. But I guess the personal concern that I have is let's take events because I feel like that's the easiest one to pick on. When it comes to creating a date field, there are so many ways to create a date field, and there's no standardization behind such a thing. So if you're asking AI or if you're just doing it yourself for the sake of a shareable recipe, that's, I think, that opinionated design factor.
Yep. Or how to do recurring events.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many
Because
ways to
there's,
do it and so many ways to do it really poorly.
yep.
Can we just take a second to talk about why PHP doesn't support AP style date formatting?
AP,
Yeah, there's a certain
like Associated Press. Am I missing?
yeah AP style date formats.
I know it does the ISO
Um,
format.
yeah. So it doesn't abbreviate month names, I think is what it was. It doesn't abbreviate month names
Like the
in
three
in
letter.
yeah, because it's only abbreviated to 3 letters if the month name is longer than 5 characters.
It's a silly rule. Maybe it has to do with multilingual and PHP being an international language. Maybe they're like, you can write your own function for it. We're not going to do it and put it in the.
Wait,
Maybe
wait a
they're
minute.
dodging it.
I'm not understanding. I've used PHP to use the 3-letter date format.
Yeah. What
What
about
am I
March?
missing here? I'm
What
trying to
about
understand what you're saying.
yeah. What about March?
What about
MAR,
March? Good
MAR
question.
or the
Isn't
full
it isn't
thing?
it MAR? I'd have to go
Oh,
look.
so in Associated Press, I believe, and I might be misremembering, but if it's 5 characters or if it's longer than 5 characters, so January, February, you'd shorten it to Jan. Nora, am I getting this right?
No, you're
Yeah,
you're in the you're in the ballpark.
you got it.
And then
Yeah.
if it's March, MARCH, because it's 5 characters, we want the whole thing, not just MAR. June, July, whole thing. August, AUG.
Yep.
Right?
Okay, so PHP
Right?
has a 3-letter, but it does
Yeah.
not have the 5-letter or 4-letter
It's
Yeah.
conditional.
like AP style does.
Yeah.
I would feel worse, but doesn't AP also not use the Oxford comma?
You know what?
I think they
They
do.
pay me by the hour. So I don't get to, or at least I didn't. I don't have to deal with this anymore. But, in the days when I was the front end developer who had to make the things render and look pretty in the way that the client wanted, and when the client wanted this, I was like, okay,
Well, it
right.
looks like
Also, I wanted to
it's even
mention,
worse.
when they do dates in some of the other countries, like in the US, they do like, the month and the day, but in other countries, it's flipped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something to watch out for if you're doing international stuff.
Yeah, I've done international stuff for a bunch of companies, Fluke in Seattle, and we had to deal with that in about 8 different languages, and date formats were just a constant source of me tearing my hair out. In fact, actually, see these gray hairs right over on this side? That was date. That was dealing with those at Fluke right there, because I think this one was having it we had English, and then we had Spanish, and then we had the Asian languages, and left to right, and oh my God, the sizing, because we had styles where they had like horizontal menus, but when we changed languages, they broke. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I usually do like the day for, let's say, 07 for the day, and then I'll do like MAR for the month. And then usually I'll do like the full year after that. So, I mean, it's to each his own, but that seems to be one that not very many people can mess it up.
I still religiously use ISO year, month, day because it alphabetically sorts correctly through significant digits. Works every time.
So I don't know for sure, but I feel like that the solve often with PHP is to run it through the date time interface. I just linked to it. So basically a formatter that forces it to do that, right? So while the sort of default storage may not be the format you're looking for, once you run it through a formatter, it should. I see at least in the PHP documentation that I was like, I thought you could. And like when you run it through the formatter and you specify a capital M in that specification of the format you want to use, it is saying in the documentation it'll do the 3-digit or 3-character month every time, is what I understand this to say. So I don't know if maybe just some implementations of frameworks that use PHP, specific ones, are not doing it well or always the same. But anyway.
Did you not create this into a module? It's your AP style module that would have been a thing to do. Would have been just do all the logic from the AP rules. Sorry, that was never mind.
There's a module for that already. That
I'm sure,
put it in there.
Right? Wouldn't there be?
But I think it illustrates all this really came back from the can you make AI make a good date or a good event content type, and the argument is always the date field. I think it's because you talk to any programmer about dates, and you just see their existence slump, especially if you have to have dates that are historic. Like, I mean, I'm talking well before standardized calendars and alternate calendars, stuff like that. You start getting really crazy when you start crossing over, that time threshold. And that's to say nothing about time zones.
Yeah.
I'm being summoned away from my computer, but it's good to see some familiar faces and some new faces and talk about how great Oxford commas are and how much we all love them so much. Gotta go. Bye.
They're important.
Bye, friends. Bye.
Hey.
It's about those recipes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story about dates first, and then we can go back to recipes. I'm gonna be celebrating my birthday twice this year because when I joined my current organization, which is US based, they flipped the dates. And then when I went down for my onboarding in March, we had they surprised me with a mini birthday celebration, let's say, at a restaurant. I was standing there like looking around like, what the hell is happening right now? And then my manager was like, "It's your birthday, isn't it?" I was like, "No, it's in September."
It's a
They were like,
month day flip.
Yeah.
It happens so often. This again is why I keep arguing for the year, month, day. It's so much easier to just convey it that way because almost everybody understands it at that point.
And it's sortable.
That's my biggest argument. I can't tell you how many different date formats I've seen in file names. I just downloaded a PDF earlier today that said May 25. Now the 25 was meant to be the year, but how do I know that?
Yeah.
Y2K bug? Anybody? Office Space, the reason why they the
We
work that
should
they did.
just use, we
Just
should
go to
type
Unix
random
time.
data
Just
in Excel and then have it create new date time formats for us and adopt those.
we can be militant about this and just go to Unix time and enforce that, right?
The
And
epoch.
everybody will be unhappy.
Well, that 20, what is it, 2034 problem? Because it's only a 32-bit integer, so it's gonna break
Need another
or
bit.
move it to 64-bit. But that I gotta go. I gotta call my daughter.
All right. See you soon, Eric. Take care.
Good seeing everybody. Bye.
So now there are
Recipes.
fewer. Yeah, recipes. I feel like anytime Drupal has some of these naming conventions like the word recipe or the even more stellar marketable Drupal CMS, because it wasn't a CMS prior to that, and that won't be harmful to SEO. It just sparks people to be a little bit more clever when it comes to their project names that utilize these things.
And naming things is hard.
It is because you need to set an expectation, and even more challenging, it's an international audience, so it needs to translate.
You just got to be creative. Look, I mean, I've been doing this so long that at one point I did. I wrote a Drupal custom module, but I used in PHP instead of using regular variable names, I used celebrity names, and yeah, that turned out to be not very maintainable. But I must say I will admit there was some alcohol involved that evening when I was programming. But yes, we had for a while, we had if Christina Aguilera is greater than or equal to Britney Spears, you know, that was a determining factor in one of those modules.
It's sort of like the code condensing things where they'll just replace all your
I got
variable
a
names.
comment from someone 2 years later, right? A nice little email nastygram saying what were you on? Please
This,
explain.
this is not self-documented code.
No, but
It's not opposite of it.
but yes, code humor does live on. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, at least you didn't put some sort of kill switch in it. Well, I think from my understanding of Drupal, and I've been working with it since 6 is when I kind of got my start, and I learned 5 and 4.7 just to support some of those sites early in my career. I mean, I think we've all seen Drupal evolve over the years, and whether it's install profiles, distributions, features, or just the custom modules that people put together just to kind of um, bootstrap a lot of the repeatable things that they need. It seems like recipes are quite the new kid on the block, perhaps even to wrangle config and config split sort of scenarios.
Yeah.
But like any new kid, it needs to find its role in the Drupal way. So I kind of questioned that. The Drupal way is this ever evolving thing. We come up with new stuff and then we try to standardize it so that way people who need to work with us or maintain that code later on don't pull their hair out because they at least know from conditioning of what the Drupal way is, at least what to expect and what to do. So I think the documentation that exists here that was shared is at least a good starting point for a lot of folks. And I'll put this in I would say show notes, meeting notes, Meetup notes. But what would you like to see recipes do for you in particular? What promise does it have for you in particular? It's a question for anybody.
I think the goal of it was maybe just to have some modules installed and configured where people could just click a button and have all that done, right? But I think Drush does a lot of that stuff if you know what you're doing. But
Yeah.
probably, like you said, it's a little bit more complicated than it sounds now. I mean, in reality, like you said, just with Drupal in general, you're lucky if you install a module and there's not some kind of mystery that goes along with it that you got to figure out. And that's okay, but I guess it's the Drupal way, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, yeah, and the Drupal way is a evolving thing. It's not a stationary point. But I also want to acknowledge that whether it's Drupal CMS, Starshot, what have you, the the audience for Drupal is beginning to focus a lot on people in marketing. Let's just put it that way. Folks that aren't just exclusively developers, designers, DevOps folks, people who play around with code and servers. Um, so I think for that reason, they needed a solution that would help quite a deal with that initial configuration without needing to know how to use code. Maybe somebody got a Drupal site spun up for them, gives it access to what it needs, and then from there, you can kind of select the features and functionality that you want your Drupal site to have. It's very easy to feature shop when it comes to anything. I can't tell you
Yeah.
how
And
many
I
Drupal
think
sites I've seen with too many modules installed or whatnot.
I think a lot of it too, some of these, business owners that have just a ton of money and large corporations, they want to get involved, but they just need something to send their IT guy to get his feet started, working on it. And so a recipe answers that requirement. Right? If he can click a few buttons and install this recipe and make it do something productive and it looks kind of like what they want, then I mean, that's a good starting point. But is it though, is the question. Is that really where they need to get moving at, or is it back to the beginning? Which I mean, I guess you could answer that two different ways. But that was my take on it.
Yeah.
I
Anybody
see
else?
value, I see value in it if it's more granular, and here's why. The I've had a lot of modules that I've run into, whether it's media or whether it's, of course, image, the image module, or dealing with CK editor, or all the little bells and whistles that can be plugged in into that thing. There are a number of different modules that we have that we are fairly popular, that are almost overwhelming just from the sheer amount of configuration and sheer amount of complexity of trying to make it work in a user-friendly way, in that's meeting the user needs of what you want to have, right? So if I want to have embeds, if I want to embed stuff into CK editor in a particular way, I've sat there and just kind of torn my hair out while I'm clicking on the little boxes and hitting save over and over again just to try and get it to do, what it does. And it's essentially a recipe. If you're looking at, what the instructions are, why not do that and then have that as kind of that built-in recipe if I want to have, explain the recipe, obviously, but that way you have less sitting there of clicking various boxes for your settings, and then you can have okay, this is CK editor configured for this type of stuff. Here's what dependencies it has, and we'll build those in as pieces into this recipe. And so you run it once, and automagically it works. And that's the goal: is that simplification of what is inherently a complex item that we have to deal with. And so it's giving you that pre-configured thing. I mean, I cook, so I understand recipes and variations and stuff. So that's kind of what you're doing, is essentially providing that simplicity to people who don't have the experience and don't want to sit there and be querying AI in the middle of the night going, why does this not work? And what am I doing wrong? And just spending hours and hours trying to configure it right.
I
So
think
that's the advantage I see.
I think we've all heard that story about a developer or tech person in general who went on Reddit, was really upset about a problem, solved it themselves. Years later, they're having the same problem, don't realize that they solved it previously, look it up, and up comes their own Reddit post where they solved it previously. And to your point, like if I'm going to cook a dish, it's not something I'm cooking every day. I might not even cook it again for another few months. So that's why a recipe helps capture that idea. If I'm configuring a CK editor, I don't want to really have to go through that pain again. Giving yourself a starting point, I think, is really what that helps with. That excites me is not only the create once, use many, but create the way that I like it and that I know works really well for a certain type of audience. There's some big solve there.
What
Uh,
about like automating the integration process? I mean, when I first started using Drupal, I think it was probably about a year ago. I have a background in engineering, but I didn't even know if I could get it configured and really going from just a basic web page. I didn't know how to do it.
I think if
It's not complicated, right? But I mean, going from like Webflow to Drupal, there is a process to get there, and it could potentially be automated, right?
well, I think
Uh,
integrations are notoriously complicated because it all depends. So if I have, let's take Salesforce, because I think that's an example everybody can kind of relate to. If I have a Salesforce instance for my company, it could be very different from the Salesforce configuration for your company. And if I'm setting up an integration, it's oftentimes data mapping. So what data mapping matters to me would inherently be different than for you. So really where you can't automate some stuff is the particularities, the instantiation of a thing. But everything else, if the connection is standardized, if the API is standardized, I mean, we already have that a lot of times in modules. So that's, I think, less a recipe thing and more of the modules, the libraries, stuff like that. I could see AI potentially helping with things like data mappings, especially if you know how to tell it what to do and it's helping with code,
I
but
don't I don't know
that's
where we're gonna start with
less
all that.
turnkey.
Yeah, the AI stuff is really mind boggling when you just
Um,
look at it.
Yeah,
I
Taryn?
mean, you could spend an entire year worth of computer programming you could get done in a night if you really thought about it.
Yeah.
I'll
There, you were
see
going to
how
say something?
well I was just saying I'll see how well I do at talking right now, but um John Locke, who's, my boss at Freelock, he definitely has been dabbling a lot with AI, as well as Michael, he he's
Anello?
known by at Alta Mike a lot of places.
Yeah.
Michael, I'm trying to think of the last name right now.
Anello?
Anello, yeah. He's been when I've been able to go to the weekly Drupal meeting he does, he's been working a lot with AI modules as well. Not like directly programming, but testing them out a lot. Do I sound okay? I feel like I'm really nasally right now.
Yeah, you
No,
sound
you're
fine.
fine.
Okay. Um, but also in regards to what you guys were talking about before, with getting, potential businesses and customers to want to use any of these new module like Experience Builder. I think it's kind of one thing I've been talking a lot with my weekly meeting with my Freelock group is that really we're trying to deal with the people convincing people to move away from all the things going on with WordPress, and all the issues that has, as well as making sure that they're not trying to do like Wix or something like something that cheap and easy. I'm in a small town in Alaska, and definitely I've been trying to go around and trying to convince people. It's like even if you don't have the budget to get brought on for a commission with my company, I can maybe do something for like $500 for you for cheaper than for something that's a little better than like just a basic Wix website. you know, Even if you don't have the budget to actually get like with my actual group, but just trying to get them because like some of these Wix websites are like super basic, like menu. Maybe they might have a little bit of info if they're a restaurant, like on the menu. They might like have their hours and stuff, but yeah, definitely no dynamic anything whatsoever.
Well,
So
it's the spectrum of ease versus power. So is it easy
yeah,
to use? Then it's probably going to be very cheap, but it's going to be very restricted. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's fun for what sometimes people refer to as a brochure site. I mean, it's just a billboard for you to put up. And I've told people this countless times. Sometimes you don't even need a website. Sometimes it's just as good to have a Google Maps point, which is just your business online. Sometimes it's good enough to have a Facebook group if that's what's appropriate. It's really just a matter of where's your audience, what are you trying to say, what's your budget, and what's your technical level and your amount of effort to keep things up.
Yeah.
So
Do you basically want an extension of your business card, pretty much?
yeah, I mean,
Like
you have
where
to
you
meet
show
people
off
where
your
they are.
portfolio or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, I think
You need a search engine, right? If you need a
Wait, what?
search engine, don't go to Wix, right? I don't
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
but I mean, there's so many solutions out there. I focus a lot more on user experience, which is both the user experience of who your audience is, as well as who needs to manage these things. If I go into a dentist's office, their focus is dental work and administration. They don't want to screw around with a website. They don't even want to pay for it if they don't have to, but they do have to if they're going to maintain a business, and that's the sacrifice they have. So anything that we can do to make their life easier as, service providers, the better. Whether that's Drupal or not Drupal, I think it's really just a matter of meeting people where they are and providing a spectrum of solutions.
Yeah, honestly, Drupal can be overkill for a lot of the more basic stuff.
Very much.
A lot of it, I had a number of businesses, about a couple of years ago, everybody was starting to move off of Drupal 7. And a lot of them were like, oh, we'll do WordPress, but their business actually needed more than WordPress, or their organization did. And so trying to find that middle ground of what's the next step beyond WordPress without being like full on advanced Drupal 11, requiring a whole team to maintain everything.
Yeah.
I was involved with the Backdrop project, which was the fork of Drupal 7,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
that
that's
worked
what I
out
was
really well
thinking.
for them. So that's a possibility. So it really depends on your clients and what they're trying to do, whether they're, it sounds like you're doing consulting for like independent small companies where it's brochureware, but sometimes they want more, and
Yeah.
that's good that you're providing that. That's
But
good. That's how I got started.
But I think this does tie back to recipes as one piece of the solution. I am very excited about Drupal CMS as a whole, and I recognize that recipes is a big component of that. But um, before we get off the appropriate solutions, I wouldn't take a non-technical grandparent and put Linux on their computer. I would never do that to them. And I feel like Drupal has for ages been that type of a solution. It is a highly technical, very powerful system. But as soon as you need to make an update or a change, depending on what sort of thing it is, that you may need to know how to work with a server. You may need to know how to work with code. And again, that non-technical grandparent probably is not even remote. They'll abandon it before they'll even try. So I think
Yeah,
in
but
terms of
it's a
turnkey,
Drupal developer to do WordPress, though, that's going to be probably more expensive.
well,
I mean,
maybe
if
depends
somebody
on
was
what it is.
going to have, yeah, like if somebody wanted you to, like, I'll do a WordPress site for somebody, but don't come to me to maintain it because I'm going to charge you like twice as much. I
Well,
mean,
there's a lot of service providers in that space. I guess what I'm getting at is if I wanted to set up a Drupal site for a restaurant today, I'd be very hard pressed to do it. If I wanted to set up a WordPress site for it, there's a lot of turnkey solutions uh, for restaurant sites using WordPress. But even then, you still have to find hosting. You still have to set up some stuff. And if I wanted a restaurant site on Squarespace or Wix, you just sign up and you have your content. So it really depends on what sort of scale you need. And I think, Tara, your point, once you get past a certain degree of complexity, like maybe I want some sort of embedded widget, or maybe I want some sort of you can order online your meal and it's delivered. As soon as you get into that threshold of complexity, you've outgrown Wix and Squarespace, unless you're using a party service, which is also an acceptable approach. What I'm getting at is Drupal CMS, recipes, they seem like a good way to jump back in that direction where old school Drupal left off, and we can really reinvest ourselves in solving those smaller to medium-sized business solutions with, things that jump over those major efforts of setting up a Drupal site. We're getting close to time. Usually about 10 to 15 minutes before we end, I like to ask folks who are attending, if you're going to attend now it's May, so next one's in June. It's the first Wednesday of every month. If you're attending in June, what Drupal topic would you like to talk about? And last time I asked that question, there were a few ideas, and I'm kind of curious if you have any additional ideas. The ideas that we had last time in April were neurodiversity and inclusion. How can we support people with DEIA issues? So we might be able to have a few folks from the community offer some insights if they're available. Another was search and search engines, so SEO and AEO. Another might just be in general, how to contribute to Drupal CMS and Experience Builder. The fourth topic that we talked about maybe doing is Drupal Marketplace, but there are some pending town halls and surveys, so maybe that's a little young. There was Nix, NIX, an alternative to DDEV and Docker, so maybe we could have John Locke join for that. And lastly would be just discussing the idea of kind of like what we're doing now with the meetup. What would a virtual conference, what would the logistics and what would the interest be in doing such a thing? So those are some of the ideas that we're rattling around, but here comes June. We're kind of getting started in summer. I want to be mindful of people's interests in the Drupal space. Do you have any ideas that you wanted to share?
Feel like there's so much push against DI right now that I would really appreciate a session on how to support people with DI in the DI space.
Okay.
Just because I feel like there's so much push against it that as a community we should be aiming to counteract it. Yes.
Yeah.
I did inform John Locke that you guys were interested in having him speak. So if you do decide that whenever you do decide that you want to have him, I'll let him know.
Okay.
We meet just about every week on Fridays. So if you let me know by Friday or something like that, then I can try to let him know.
Yeah. My hope is that after, I get the meeting notes put together, get the recording posted, and then I'll post about our next one, and I'll see if our group wants to vote. I think just in case anybody isn't in the Slack channel, again, it's Drupal Slack. The name of the channel is Pacific Time Virtual Drupal Users Group. Rolls right off the tongue. So if you aren't part of that, join that, please, because that's where I'll typically put the vote, and then you can kind of weigh in with that or any other topics that you have. Any other ideas?
I have a host of ones that we could address. Let's start with accessibility. That's a big thing in government sites that I work on.
Okay. Anything particular about accessibility?
What is it? First off, why is it important? Why is it even brought up? And it's accessibility and Drupal specifically would be, how do you configure Drupal to be accessible and meet those requirements for X508 or whatever, not X508, I'm sorry, for accessibility. Sorry, I'm thinking of certificates right now. How that works. Other ones are multilingual. How do you do internationalization? How do you approach that? What are some of the several different approaches, whether you're working with a company or whether you're just using Drupal's internationalization right out of the box? And what would another one be? Multi-site, when's it appropriate? When's it Pantheon doesn't allow it, for example, or versus cloud hosting, versus internal hosting or inexpensive hosting. Hosting options is another one, because I've run into different options for Drupal hosting, from the super expensive with Acquia to the dirt cheap, almost barely HostGator or something like that. Yeah, there's a slew of ones that we could do. And
I would second the hosting. I actually posted a thing in the chat related to Tira's conversation earlier. At DrupalCon Atlanta, Ashraf from Debug Academy was talking a lot about his hosting solution that he's currently sort of launching called Drupal, and it's geared to be a low cost, low maintenance solution for Drupal. And it's an interesting space to target. I think that all of us kind of have thought about it, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I'll just say I'll second that, Ryan. That hosting, I think, is a big topic right now for multiple reasons, up to and including philosophical, political, or otherwise. And so that would be a strong plus for me. I do feel like that it ties back a lot for me also into DEI to some degree. So
I know
I'm
there was
sorry if
some
I cut you off
controversy.
there.
There was some controversy around Pantheon that I remember reading about about a year ago. So with who they were hosting versus politics and the other
Yeah,
stuff.
it was the
You all can
heritage.
read about it and may form your own opinions. I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, hosting is one. Workflow is another. We have a particular workflow that we work with for that hosting. This kind of links into it where I know someone mentioned alternatives to DDEV. I've been forced into that because of my client Caltrans doesn't allow DDEV. Docker versus Podman versus, that's hosting as well because it's Red Hat
So
versus
so you're
all that kind
talking
of crazy stuff.
deployment workflow, not
Yeah.
publication workflow.
Yeah, deployment workflow. It's more, unfortunately, I've been forced into being DevOps. I'm normally an applications developer with Drupal, but I have to play DevOps on many occasions and write things that I'm forced me out of my comfort zone. So, but there's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on in the background. What is your workflow? Are you FTPing stuff like old
Yeah.
school,
Oof.
or are you using Git, GitHub, GitLab, whatever that process? GitHub Actions. What are you doing? CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development.
Untamed testing. Yeah.
Yeah, automated testing. That's a whole nother ball of wax
Can of
just
worms.
right there. So there's a gajillion different things to do, and this is kind of why Drupal cons are so popular, is you can kind of pick and choose
Lots of
what you
topics.
want to do. So
Well, these are good ideas. I am putting a few of these in the notes, and if for whatever reason you think of another one when we're offline, just share it in the channel. We'll put it to a vote, and just if it doesn't come up for June, we'll recycle them. We can keep a topic list running.
And I got to be back on Slack because I realized I've been on Teams here for the last
I'm sorry.
6 to 8 months. Well, it's what they use, right? So
Yeah.
I just haven't on Slack, and I got to get back on there.
Yeah. That's where all the Drupalers are. I mean, Slack is, if anything, a really good tool for the Drupal community because that's where a lot of people try to help asynchronously beyond the issue queue. Wow, that sounds
Or
like
as long as the Drupal Association has a super awesome deal with Slack, yes.
Yeah, and I've used it for, years before, to the point that I have personal irritation whenever I hear that sound, right? But you know what I'm talking about, don't you? I mean, maybe I need to mute my stuff more, but man, okay. So that
you can
just
definitely
triggered me. That's a trigger for me.
you can definitely change the sound too.
Yeah, I know. And I really should. But yeah, anyway, I digress. I need to get back on that stuff. Workspaces, yes. Workspaces. I've had to deal with workflow, internal content workflow as well. Somebody brought that up in the chat here. And just
I use Don't Interrupt app, and it is, ever since I pay $5 a month, and I have a million different Slack workspaces. I don't actually use Teams, fortunately, but it does support it, and you can basically get your calendar to tell your Slack to shut up. and while you're doing stuff.
Okay.
So check it out.
That's going in the notes right there. Thank you. That's good.
And
That's a good one.
you can do custom status updates. That's how I was brought to it. Particularly is that I could, do customized status things automated.
I'm with
Well,
you, Pavlos.
if I learned nothing today, which is not true, I actually learned a bunch. But yeah, that's a definite good takeaway. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, notification fatigue is definitely a real thing.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay.
All right. I gotta run. It was absolutely nice seeing everyone. Good talk about Drupal recipes and everything beyond, of course. Hope to see you in June. Stay plugged into the Slack channel if you want real-time updates. But yeah, hope to see you then. And in the meantime, keep Drupaling. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, chat.
Yep.
Thanks,
Bye.
audience.